What's going on, everybody? Dylan Manfre on hand for the Sport Profile. I'm so excited to be joined by Mollie Walker, a general assignment sports reporter for the New York Post. Hello. I talk with people at the New York Daily News all the time, so I'm like getting too confused.
It's a
How are you
very
doing
common
today?
mix-up.
Is
It's
it
a
really?
common mix-up, don't worry. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. How have you been spending quarantine? I saw you posted like 4 stories today, so obviously you're keeping busy.
Yeah, so my schedule is definitely a little bit more modified now. Obviously, no games or practices.
Yeah.
But even beforehand, I was doing what we call web shifts, which is kind of like scouring the internet, I guess, all day for any breaking news in any sport, any team that would be worthy of posting on the Post. We do a lot of Tom Brady. Thank God for Tom Brady. Tom Brady does really, really well on our website. So just things like that, things that will generate clicks and people coming to our website. So I do that about 2 to 3 times a week. And then the other days I'm usually assigned, as my specialty is hockey. So I usually do Rangers and NHL news if there's anything breaking with, if they're coming back or they've discovered a way to put the season back on. So I'll cover that, and then I'll work on features and stuff, outside features that I work in my own time, basically.
Yeah.
And that's fun too.
Sure. I mean, it definitely makes it, I'm sure, manageable for the most
Yes,
part.
yes.
You
And
miss
I
being in the
mean,
newsroom?
not having to go anywhere. So
Yeah. Do you live in New York right now, or like
I
how
live in
far?
Jersey,
Oh, you're
actually.
in Jersey. Same
Yeah,
to me. Where are you at?
I'm in Bergen County.
Oh, my grandparents live there. That's so funny.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not too far from, the city and everything.
No, it really was perfect for me because being general assignment, I cover all the New York teams.
Yeah.
So it's kind of smack dab in the middle of everything, of everywhere that I need to go. It's
Yeah.
kind of a haul to go out to Long Island for the Islanders, which I was
Sure.
doing pretty frequently before everything shut down. But I'm 30 minutes away from MetLife Stadium.
Yeah.
I'm 40 minutes away from Florham Park where the Jets practice. So constantly going up there, and then I'll go to the city for
Mhm.
MSG. So it's nice being kind of in the middle.
Yeah, definitely. How how has all of this really been for you? I saw a bunch of trends on Twitter were saying that ask people like post like their last picture of normalcy in like
Mhm.
sports. So what was that? What was your last moment before
My
everything
last
happened?
moment, my last day in the field was at the Brooklyn Nets practice facility the day that Kenny Atkinson was fired.
Really?
The morning after, which was cool for me because I haven't covered that kind of press conference yet.
Oh,
So
wow.
we spoke to the general manager, and it was a lot of people were very curious with why Kenny Atkinson was fired. So
Yeah.
it was very cool for me. I just started in this business. I was hired in June of last year. So
Hmm.
getting to watch all the I guess, expert reporters or veteran reporters, I should say, really pick Sean Mark's brain and, respectfully ask questions, but
Sure.
try, was a cool experience for me. I kind of just sat and watched, and then I talked a little bit more in the player press conferences, but for Sean Marks, I let the veterans take that because people were very, very confused. So that was my last day in the field, which I honestly am thankful for because a lot of the hockey teams started doing social distancing practices with games and such, and I never did that.
Really?
So I'm hoping everything goes back to 100% normal and I never have to deal with those media scrums with 6-foot distance between us and the player, which is so weird. So yeah,
So
that
you
was
were actually in a social distance media scrum.
I have never been in one because I only covered that Nets practice and I wasn't in the field for the
Oh,
following
okay.
like 5 days where everything really was hitting the fan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which like I think hockey was one of the first sports to do social distance media scrums.
Mm.
and I for some reason wasn't on any hockey for those following days, and then everything just was canceled. So I never did any of those social media days. I mean, social distancing days.
What do you think that would have, like, did you see any, like, pictures of what that was like?
Yeah, it was awkward. It was awkward.
Was it?
Yeah, it was, the player was against the backdrop, and then, and usually the cameras, and we're all right in their face basically.
Yeah.
We're all fighting for the best spot to have the most normal one-on-one conversation with him while all these other people are sitting around.
Sure.
But you couldn't do that. You had to call out. You couldn't use the technique of getting their eye contact and drawing them in with I want to ask you a question. So
Yeah.
watching it from afar was definitely strange, and I was very upset. I didn't like it at all, and they stopped giving access to the locker room altogether, and just bringing out specific players, which is just such a huge disadvantage, because when you get to go into the locker room, you could talk to anybody. You strike up a conversation with someone and end up using their quote in your article that you didn't even think you were going to get. So
So according to your Twitter bio,
yes,
it says shortest person in a media scrum.
Yes, I usually am. Usually am.
You mind if I ask how tall you are?
I'm 5'3".
You're 5'3". So and you said like it's weird because people are like fighting to be in like, up in their faces. You ever have any like weird interactions where maybe you were nudged a little bit? What's the weirdest media scrum you've ever been in?
I actually, one time at Citi Field, I think we were interviewing, I think it was a media scrum for Pete Alonso.
Okay.
And
So
obviously,
you a lot.
Yeah. So when it's Pete Alonso, all the cameras are there.
Yeah.
So I got good positioning, and I was relatively in the front, and I was just, minding my own business, listening to Pete. And I suddenly felt something on the top of my head. And I kind of like looked up a little bit, and I realized that the cameraman behind me was using me as a stand to film Pete Alonso.
No way.
Yeah, I'm not sure what media outlet it was for, but I looked up, and honestly, I felt bad. I didn't want to ruin his shot. So I stayed still for the entire press conference.
Did you talk to him after that?
Yeah, well, afterward, he apologized.
Yeah. Did he know? Did he, like, I'm sure he knew.
No, I didn't know.
No, he did. Like, did he know he was doing that, or?
I'm not sure. I think he might have realized like halfway through, but probably realized I wasn't moving, so just went with it.
That's so funny.
But he at least apologized after it, and I was like, oh, no problem. Happy to help. So.
I mean, that's such a funny interaction. I'm sure that's like definitely up there in like your funniest moments of being a sports reporter.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because after that, I was just standing waiting for the next media scrum, and Tajay Davis comes up to me, Rajay Davis comes up to me, and he's like, he said something along the lines of, I love when you're around. You make me feel so tall, because he's a littler guy compared to the rest of the team, but next to me, he's a solid 5 inches taller than me. So he came around me, and he was like, I love when you come around. You make me feel so tall. So I said, the guy over there just used me as a stand for Pete Alonso's media scrum, and he got a kick out of that. So that was a pretty funny interaction.
You found that funny?
Yeah, he did.
Oh my God.
He did.
So you mentioned that in June, like it's going to be like, I guess your 1 year anniversary at the Post. So what has this year really been like for you?
It's definitely been interesting coming towards the end here. I actually started as an intern my summer going into my senior year of college. So I stayed in contact with them my entire senior year, and I sent them along every article I ever wrote for the student newspaper. And then I was hired, and I basically did the same job that I did as an intern, except as a full-fledged reporter. Yes. Yeah. I would do web shifts. I would have to go into the office, and I would do web shifts there mostly. And then I'd have like maybe a day or two every 2 weeks in the field, which was, and they would spread it out across all sports. I did a couple of training camp days for the Giants and Jets. I did some Rangers, Islanders, Devils development camp, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, it was good, and I learned a lot. And I mean, it doesn't feel like a job.
Yeah,
Is basically all I can say is that I get paid to go and watch sports and talk to athletes, and it's a blessing.
such a beautiful thing. What motivated your interest in reporting, really? At what point in your life did you think that this can really be something for me and I can make a career out of this?
Um, Growing up, in middle school and high school, I was an athlete.
Mm,
I played 3 sports all the way through
wow.
8th grade. Yeah, I played soccer, basketball, volleyball, and softball. And
Okay.
then high school, I kind of centralized it to I did soccer my freshman year, and then I did basketball all 4 years.
Hmm.
Um, so sports has always been a huge part of my life.
Definitely.
I just love team camaraderie. I love being a part of a team, and then my other talent was writing,
Mhm.
but not necessarily reporting. I did not like the student newspaper at my high school, preferably because I didn't like the girl that run it.
Okay.
So I never worked for this student newspaper at my high school, but I did a lot of creative writing with
Mhm.
one of my teachers who I adored, and I actually applied to a writing contest at Ryder, and I
Really?
won. Yeah, I
No
did.
way.
Yeah, so that's what I would do all my senior year. I just kind of racked up a bunch of accolades and stuff for writing. And then I kind of discovered journalism as a
Mhm.
major. And I applied to all the different schools that I wanted to go to as either a journalism major or if they didn't have journalism, then English.
Okay.
But I didn't really know what I could do with English except for write novels, which
Mhm.
I didn't know if I necessarily wanted to do. But I just one day I think it just kind of clicked to put my love of sports and writing together, and who lo and behold, it's a whole profession.
Yeah. What was it like covering your first game or your first story rather? Do you remember what it was?
For the Post, yes. As an intern, my first day in the field was at the Yankees Hope Week, like a
Okay.
charity week that they do. All different days had different themes and different organizations, and they sent me up to a camp in New York, and it was awesome. It was all the Yankees players came with their families, and it was a fundraising event, and it was cool. Got to talk to them. It was very casual because it was at a camp,
Yeah.
which I also wasn't expecting that athletes could be casual. But that was definitely a really cool experience. What was my first game? My first game was a Mets game, I think, for the
Okay.
Post. I did a lot of Mets when I first started in June. I was there a lot, um, and it was it's you have to pinch yourself when you're walking in, and you have a thing around your neck that lets you go wherever you want to in the
Yep.
stadium.
I
So,
got mine like
oh
right
yeah,
over there on my mirror.
oh yeah, I collect all of mine still too. Don't worry. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's not a job.
So have you described like your love for hockey? Where does that really come from? Because I know you wrote for the hockey writers. You did a lot of hockey at UMass.
Hmm.
Where does your love for hockey really come from? Since you didn't
Um,
play.
yeah, I never played, but I think it was around 8th grade. My mom has always been a huge fan. My
Sure.
mom is a diehard Ranger fan her whole life. And she always watched games growing up, and sometimes I would just be there, but I never really took an interest until 8th grade. And then from there, it just kind of grew. I became a fan of the Rangers with my mom. We'd watch every game, and um, I just loved it. I don't really know how to explain it. I having played all the other, maybe because I didn't play it.
It was like the one
I
sport that you didn't do.
Yeah, it was definitely one of them I didn't do. So I found it fascinating, basically doing all the skills and things that I had learned throughout my athletic career, but doing it on skates.
Yeah.
So I thought it was the hardest sport I had ever seen. It was exhilarating. I loved all the, I guess, the culture that comes with it sometimes. So it was just organic for me to cover the UMass hockey team when I got to UMass. It was something I really wanted to do, and I got to cap it off with a trip to Buffalo for the national
Yeah.
championship. that was something I never thought I would have been able to do, especially because when I got to UMass, they had won 5 games, the
Really?
hockey team. And I just wanted to go to a D1 school and be able to be around D1 sports. I didn't even care if they were good or not. So
Mhm.
I still went to all those hockey games, even though they lost every game. So if you were to tell my freshman self that I was going to be in Buffalo for the Frozen Four national championship covering UMass, I would have told you were crazy. So that was definitely a culminating experience for me, and just
Definitely.
kind of solidified that I would love to work full time in hockey.
I guess let me ask you the same question now. What would you tell your freshman self about you now than now that you are a professional sports reporter covering hockey majority
Hmm.
and back in college, like I'm sure you're a little unsure of yourself, of what you really wanted to do.
Hmm.
What would you tell yourself now or
Uh,
then?
I I I really would just tell myself to take every opportunity, which I feel like I did. I really capitalized on everything that UMass had to offer, from the professors to the outside curricular activities. I really threw myself into the student newspaper my senior year.
Mhm.
I wasn't on staff or anything for my first 3 years. I was also in a sorority, so that was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
But I would definitely just say to keep taking advantage of all the opportunities, because I don't have any regrets from college. I think that everything I did in college is what got me to this point, truly.
Mhm.
From just getting the internship with the Post to how I handled that national championship run, that I think put me over the edge, because I was able to write for a national audience. And I got a lot of national recognition for that too, which was so much fun. And I was also kind of dabbling with broadcast. I
Yeah.
was comfortable enough with the players to record myself talking to them,
Yeah.
and they were comfortable enough with me because they had been around me for so long. And with all the reporters that were coming around then, they were just jumping on the bandwagon then because they were so good at suddenly. And me and the other college beat writers had been there for years, so
Yeah.
we totally had a leg up. The SID would always give us the best stories, the most exclusive interviews, so
Mhm.
it really worked in my favor. And I think it definitely solidified that I was able to write for a national audience.
Yeah, I definitely feel that too because at Ryder I covered women's basketball primarily, and we had Stella Johnson who led the
Hmm.
Leafs in scoring, and now she got drafted to the WNBA. So
Yep.
it definitely was so much fun. Covering that team. Although I mean the season got cut short in the tournament, which personally I think they would have won out hands down. I
Yeah.
definitely think they would have won the entire MAC tournament. Um, but it's definitely, fun covering somebody of, that magnitude and at that
Yeah.
level, especially.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've heard of Cale Makar. He went to the NHL days after that Buffalo trip, and now he's in the running for the Calder Trophy. And
Yeah.
I actually got to go talk to him when he came to Long Island to
Oh,
play
wow.
the Islanders this season. Yeah, I went to his morning skate, and I went in and I said hey, and caught up with him. It was very cool. It was very surreal for me because I was just so used to seeing him at UMass, and now I literally cried when he
So it's
scored
like
his
both you
first
guys have
goal.
come full circle.
Yeah, and I watched him in the playoffs. After we got back from Buffalo, because he went right to the Avalanche, which was just astounding.
Yeah.
And he scored on his very first shot. And I remember my mom was making fun of me because I was like, I don't even know what came over me. I just couldn't even stop crying. I was just so happy for him, and like it was a really cool experience. So getting to see him again and see how well he's doing, and how he's so integrated into the team now. I talked to the other guys about him, which was also cool to hear what they said about him.
Of course.
That was very, very cool for me.
I'm sure it's very, gratifying for you because, like I said, it's a full circle moment for, I guess, for the both of you, really.
Yeah, even just to have him recognize me was enough. I
Sure. Um, how have you, I guess, measured your own growth and success as a reporter? A lot of people say they're their own biggest critic. I know I am. How have you, I guess, measured your growth,
An
over your
interesting
career?
question. Um, I think the majority of my measurement comes from my confidence.
Okay.
I would say that from when I first started going into the field, when I first started as a full-time reporter to now, I'm so much more comfortable talking to athletes. I'm so much more just confident in my ability to be able
Yeah.
to strike up a conversation with anybody. And you learn a lot. You learn about the athletes, you learn about who is willing to speak, who's not, and things like that. You learn just with experience. And you even just knowing a certain way to approach someone just to get them to start talking. If you can go one way or the other, one way he'll shut you down, the other way he'll keep the conversation going. So that probably was one of the first things that I had to navigate.
Mhm.
And now I'm kind of in the point of my career where I'm trying to establish connections with everybody that I come in contact. I want to
Sure.
be memorable. I want people to think when I call them again, like, of course I'm going to help her and help give her whatever she needs. So
Absolutely.
I went from, just going straight into my questions to, I didn't want to waste their time, to trying to strike up a conversation and actually build a relationship. So that I would probably say is my biggest measurement.
Yeah.
And I definitely think I have a ways to go. There's
Of
still
course.
players that are, and I'm a little more intimidated to approach, or things like that, just because of their reputations. It could be anything. So
Yeah.
I definitely think that's still something I'm navigating, but that only comes with experience. So you
Absolutely.
can't get that anywhere else.
Who has been the best athlete really to interact, you've interacted with, that maybe was it an interaction where you just felt really comfortable and just really like confident in yourself?
I would probably say this is probably one of my favorite stories to tell people.
Sure.
I think it was like it was probably like my 10th Mets game. I was pretty comfortable being there. I had introduced myself to a couple of the guys, and pregame for papers, we have different deadlines for different editions. So
Hmm.
sometimes you have to put in an article before game time, because that's what will be in the first edition of the paper.
Yeah.
So they wanted me to do a story on Robinson Cano.
Okay.
So I walked up to Robinson Cano in the locker room and I said, "Hey, like, Robbie, you got a second?" And he looked at me and he said, "No." I said, I kind of smiled and I was like, okay. I was like, do you have a second in the next hour or so? Because it was still pretty early. They were about to go out for batting practice.
Hmm.
And he smiled at me and he was like, maybe. And I was like, if I go up on the field and wait for you, like, will you speak to me? And he was like, we'll see. So he left, and the rest of the writers were like, don't count on it. He's not coming back.
Were you getting
Another
nervous a little bit
story.
that it actually wasn't going to happen?
I mean, no, because I had a backup. I had, another interview that I had that I could have turned into a pre. So
Okay.
I was just more so nervous that he straight up was like, no.
Yeah.
I was more like, that was my first like absolute shutdown. Like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not talking to you. So I was like, okay, I'm still gonna stick with it, even though everybody else was like, pick a different story. It's not gonna happen.
Hmm.
I went up on the field and I don't even remember how it happened, but I guess there was music playing that during batting practice, and I was just standing on the field, like waiting on my phone or something. And I guess I started dancing to the beat a little bit on the side of the field.
You know what song it
And I
was?
guess Robinson Cano saw me standing on the side of the field dancing and waiting for him. So he must have gotten a kick out of that, because shortly after he came off the field and he was like, "Are you ready?" And I was like,
Oh,
yeah. And I followed him into the dugout. He made sure to take me like away from all the other writers. So I only got his quotes.
yeah.
And he talked to me for 20 minutes. And
Really?
after that, he asked me what my name was. And from then on, every time he saw me, he would address me by name and say hi. And I would just be like, hey, Robbie. So that was probably really cool for me, only because everybody said not to chase the story, and I stuck with it. And I was respectful.
Yeah.
I let him know I really needed to talk to him. And, that's all you really need to do. Like, these players are people too. So they get it. So that's probably my favorite story to tell, because obviously it's Robinson Cano.
Yeah.
I grew up a Yankee fan. So
Really?
yeah, so that was also very cool for me.
Yeah, sure. How has what's a really good way to, I guess, humanize these professional athletes so that you are able to be comfortable, talking around them?
Um, I think it probably just comes with being around them,
Hmm.
just being, with them when there's no cameras around, being at the morning skates, listening to their conversations on the ice, like just hearing them talk like normal people. And I know a ton of the guys on the Islanders, they all had baby girls. Like
Yeah.
four of them had baby girls this quarantine. So, just asking a new dad about his daughter, like this isn't about hockey, it's not about money, it's not about wins or losses, it's about Anders Lee just had a baby girl, like
Hmm.
it's it's those little things that are very easy to humanize. And I'm a big chaser of the father son, father daughter, mother daughter type stories,
Yeah.
athletes have parents that used to be athletes. I think there's always a story there. If you grew up when your mother or father was a major athlete, like your life is different than the rest of ours. And I just think that's so cool. And I've done so many different father son pieces, like mother son pieces throughout my entire career, even dating back to college. So
Really?
I always love to chase those stories because like most people have moms and dads, and it's just a normal thing.
Yeah. Did your parents play sports at all?
Yeah, my dad played basketball in college too. He played for Albany. My mom
Okay.
was never an athlete, but I got all my athleticism from my dad.
Sure. Um, what was it? What was it? How can you, I guess, distinguish yourself as a reporter going into this? Because, like you just said before, I think you touched on it earlier, you're not you're not a veteran.
Hmm.
That you're only in your first, I guess, professional year of this.
Yeah.
How are you able to distinguish yourself from those veteran reporters so you are able to stand out?
Again, I think it's confidence. I think, in a press conference, you need to be able to take the mic and ask a question, and you
Yeah.
need to be able to not stumble through it, and you need to be able to understand what you're saying and know what kind of answer you're looking for. And I've had it happen to me a bunch of times, especially sitting at the Rangers practice, where it goes down the line and it's male question after male question after male question, and this little itty bitty female voice comes on, and everybody in the room turns, like nobody's expecting a little voice to come and start speaking and asking a question. So I remember that happened to me once, where
Mm,
literally the whole room turned and I
really?
stopped. I stopped because I literally was like, like, what? So, but especially when those types of things happen, it's like you need to ignore it and you need to continue doing what you were there to do, with the question that you're going to ask, and just confidence in that what you're talking about too, and just as much as the next guy. Just because I couldn't detail the 1990 to 94 Rangers like in and out,
Yeah.
I wasn't even alive. So that's the other thing. I'm
Yeah. I mean, you can
much,
only
much
do so
younger
much.
than a lot of the people that I work with. So that's kind of a running joke is, when they're talking about a historical moment, Mollie wasn't even a thought yet. So it's just, take rolling with the punches, and, it's funny. Yeah, I'm 23 and everybody else is 55. So
Hmm.
it's definitely a give and take. You just got to roll with it, and I just try to be myself. Like I treat them like my friends. Like it's
Sure.
just, you get respect like that, just being yourself and not trying to prove something or be something you're not. And it's also about respect too, because especially in the journalism industry, I feel there's a hierarchy. There's it depends on how many years you've been in the business. That all stuff matters.
Yeah.
And I think it's also just being respectful of that. Like if you're in the Yankees press conference, Meredith Marakovich is asking the first question. There is no question about it. Like there is
Hmm.
nobody else in that room that will ask the first question. So you need to know that Meredith goes
Yeah.
first, and it's just like a respect thing. So I definitely feel like that too is how you kind of hang with the vets.
Yeah. Are there any misconceptions about the industry? Maybe things that professors or, other people you looked up to had told you that, now being in this for a year, you realized maybe weren't true?
I think a lot of people, especially with what's going on right now, it's a very cutthroat industry.
Yeah.
So, when push comes to shove and cuts are being made, people are expendable. And whether or not people abide by the hierarchy or, abide by how many years you've contributed to the media site or outlet is, yet to be seen. But I really can't even put it into words how supportive the Post has been for
Yeah.
me this entire time, from just showing faith in me to keep me on staff, because we furloughed and laid off a bunch of people on our staff. So
Hmm.
just the fact that they kept me on and they keep letting me chase any story that I want to, really. I don't think I've ever been told flat no when I've
Hmm.
pitched a story. They've talked it out with me, and then maybe we realize it's not something that we should pursue, but I've never been told flat out no. I've
Really?
always been given the resources that I need and the freedom that I need to chase the stories that I want. And for being a 23-year-old kid straight out of college, that means a lot to me.
That's
That,
wonderful.
yeah, that's not something I really expected, because I feel like my professors told me it's very, it just goes a certain way. And it's, my experience really hasn't been that at all. It's really
Mhm.
been so pleasant in that sense. So I consider myself very, very lucky.
Yeah, it's, as somebody who's, a rising junior in college right now, I think that's very, refreshing to hear,
Yeah.
um, because of how many people, I don't know if I want to say like poo-poo the industry, but make it out to be really, really cutthroat. And it
Yeah.
is, but there's
100%.
also people who are just like really supportive and nice. Like
A
there are good
100%.
people, and I've always tried to maintain that belief.
Yeah,
Um,
you definitely just have to be positive about it. And it is about the place. It is about the outlet. I'm blessed that I've only been with the New York Post since I've been an intern. So
mhm.
I can't speak to other places or other outlets, but it's all about, you need to, it's also an interview for them when you're
Yeah.
interviewing for a job. You want to feel confident with them. You want to feel comfortable and like they respect you and respect your ideas. And I have felt that from the day I was an intern.
Mhm.
They sent me to Rangers development camp, which they knew was a huge deal for me. And I had a story that day, and they weren't going to send me back. They had no plans of it. But after I sent in that article, they called me up that night and said, "We're going to send you back the next day. Like,
Really?
do something else." And I did. And I remember being like they want me to go back. Like they liked what I did so much that they want something else from me, from the Rangers. So I think, just little things like that is just how an outlet can show their confidence in you. And especially for me as an intern,
Yeah.
I was astounded by
Yeah,
that.
I'm sure that makes you I mean, I can't imagine how, good that makes you feel about
Hmm.
yourself and the
Yeah.
work that you're doing then. What's been the most gratifying, I guess, experience for you throughout this past, year, that you've been able to do this?
I think the most gratifying part of it is all the relationships that I've made, especially within the Post. I
Mhm.
consider them to be family at this point, and it's really only been a year, but
Yeah.
I miss all the reporters that I was out in the field with, all the beat reporters, my editor. I mean, I never saw my editors anyway. I was talking to them on the phone like I am now, but I mean, I'm the only female reporter on staff. So,
Really?
for me to say that, yeah, for me to say that, that I miss it being in the field with my five buddies, that are 60, 55, 45, it's funny. It's, that idea to me is very funny, but I really felt like they really like took ownership of me, I guess, like really owned me, like
Yeah.
took me in and they really, they were happy to accept me into their little family that they have. And I was like, that was just definitely the most gratifying thing for me is, all the friendships I've made and the reporters that I have been reading for years too, no
Yeah.
less. Larry Brooks has been my idol since I've
Mhm.
been 10 years old, and he'll be very unhappy that I date him like that on the regular. But, he's a Hall of Fame hockey writer.
Yeah.
And whenever I even share a page in the paper with him, I have to pinch myself sometimes. So he has been such a mentor to me, and taking me under his wing, and passing along his knowledge to me and his thoughts, and just having intellectual conversations with him about hockey, and him agreeing with something that I said is like,
Yeah.
you agree with what I just said, so definitely just the fact that they really owned me, for
What's
sure.
the best piece of advice that he gave you?
Larry?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's so much advice. It's more so just having those intellectual conversations, talking, obviously I'm not at the level yet where I'm talking about contracts and talking about, who the Rangers should sign, or who should
Sure.
they should buy out and stuff like that. So having that intellectual banter with someone like Larry Brooks is just an experience all in itself,
Yeah.
just getting to pick his brain and listen to his stories and his, just the insider stuff that he knows really is rewarding all by itself. So I
Sure.
can't pinpoint one piece of advice, but it's more so just his, constant friendship and faith in me. And I honestly, to this day, I really do think that he had a huge part in me getting hired too. So he definitely means a lot to me.
Amazing. That's amazing, really. I guess, given the situation that the world is in right now, what would you normally be doing today if, COVID never existed?
Yeah. So I was actually supposed to be at Yankees opening day in
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore, which I was very much so looking forward to. But I'm not 100% sure how my schedule would have changed,
Mm.
with this season change. Baseball was just starting up, and I did do a lot of baseball when I first
Yeah.
started. So I'm not, and because that was one of the last things that was put on my schedule, I kind of think I was probably going to lay off the hockey and come into baseball more. But it also depended on if the Islanders made the Stanley Cup playoffs, the playoffs,
Yeah.
or if the Rangers made the playoffs. So, it would depend on how many hockey writers we needed. If both teams made the playoffs, I probably would have stayed on the Islander beat, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have Brett and Larry. So it could have gone either way. They could have split them too on both the hockey beats, because hockey, unfortunately, is not really a big pull
Yeah.
in the Post. We're definitely more known for our football and baseball.
Mm.
So I think being general assignment, it would have been a mix of a lot of different things. I probably would have started coming off the hockey games and heading into baseball, but I don't think they've canceled the U.S. Open yet, the tennis
I think
tournament.
it got postponed. I think
Postponed, yeah.
maybe
Well,
to September, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken.
I think I covered that last August,
Mm,
which I think that was my favorite event I've
the
covered,
U.S. Open.
the U.S. Open, just because I have so much respect for single sport, like single team athletes, like no,
Mm,
like an individual sport, I guess I should say,
yeah.
because I've always played just team sports.
Mm,
So the Serena and Venus Williams, the Roger Federers, like those people are just like a whole different level for me. And I had never been to the U.S. Open, so
yeah.
just getting to walk in, and I sat front row for Serena Williams, and I was just like, what is this life? So I hope I would have been put on that again, because I had so much fun with that. I covered a Roger Federer match that went 5 sets past 12 a.m. I'm on like a 5-minute deadline. I had to have 2 stories. Like one, Roger Federer gets like upset. The other one where he like just barely beats this kid. So I had to have like 2 stories running, and I had to get it in as soon as it ended. And I remember the next day, our head tennis guy, Mark Berman, texted me and said, you did a really good job with Roger Federer given the circumstances. And I was like, thank you for that acknowledgement, because it was really hard, and I appreciate you saying that. So I hope I would have been there, because that was so much fun. I absolutely
Mm.
loved that. But yeah, I think I probably would have just been transitioning into the next seasons of sports.
What's the hardest part about writing on deadline? I know that's a very loaded question, and I'm sure you never want to be on deadline, but I know you are. what's the hardest part about it? Because I'm sure it's hard to come up with ideas of new stories that, you want to put out.
One word: overtime. Or extra innings. It's just, those are obviously the hardest ones to write through. I mean, I've had it happen to me a million times where I had to just scrap everything that I just wrote because the Islanders scored 2 goals in the last 2 minutes or something like that, to force overtime. So your whole story that you've been working on the entire game is just in the trash. So that's definitely probably the most, overwhelming part about it. And then on
So
top of
so
it,
you view overtime as a positive, is what I'm saying?
no, not a
Or,
positive. No,
okay,
it's
yeah, I just
definitely
wanted to
just,
make sure I got that clear.
yeah, no, not a positive. It's definitely very overwhelming when it's heading into overtime or extra innings or anything like that, because
Mm-hmm.
the game could end at any second.
Yeah,
So it's like you have to be able to, whatever you just see that ends the game, you have to go right to the top of the article and like just rework the entire thing, to write what had happened at the very end of the game, because at that point, that's obviously the most important thing.
yeah,
It's very overwhelming. And then especially at hockey games, you're sitting there and you're typing away and you're trying to send it, and everybody's running to the locker room too. So you don't want to miss the locker room scrums too. You got to get there as soon as the
yeah.
locker room opens. So if you're like kind of, I guess, delaying and not getting it in as soon as you possibly can, then you're probably going to miss a couple interviews and probably not beat the crowd and have to throw a few elbows to get down to the bottom. So that's probably the most overwhelming part about being on deadline.
Have you ever missed a
Nope.
deadline?
Nope.
No.
And I won't let it happen. I won't let it
Were
happen.
you ever very, very close?
Not like, I mean, the Roger Federer one, like that one was just like, I was just a victim of circumstance, like there's
Sure.
no way to get around that, there's just no way. But like Mark said, I did pretty decent with it because
Yeah.
I had been taught, how to write 2 stories and how to, navigate that, which is really difficult to do. I haven't had to do it a lot of times. That was one of that was like the only time I really had like 2 Word documents with 2 completely different stories. That
Mm.
doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, you need to be able to do it. But knock on wood, I have not missed any deadlines or anything like that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
plan to. So.
Nope. Being a general assignment sports reporter, what are the challenges of covering so many different leagues at the same time? Because
Just that.
you're one day and somewhere else the next.
Yeah, just that. I mean, going from sport to sport, and from team to team, you just have to do a lot of brushing up before you get there. You
Yeah.
just need to know that all the top storylines of the day, who to watch out for. If somebody walks into the room that's not supposed to be there, like you need to be able to recognize that. You need to be able to recognize who that person is, why it's a big deal that they're here. You kind of just need to be on your toes and stuff for stuff like that. But I definitely think that what a lot of general assignment people say is they'll mix up athletes' names and stuff. Like
Mm.
I'll go to ask a football coach about a hockey player just because they have the
Oh,
same first name, and I'll have to catch myself and be like, no, you know who I mean, like XYZ.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
I think that's probably a more funny part of it. I do it all the time in conversation. I could be at a football game and I'll just be like, oh, that's an icing or something. I don't know. I'll call it like something completely different, just a terminology that, and I always, and it's funny for other people that aren't general assignments because they probably started as a general assignment. So they'll be like, oh, I remember those days. Like, so that's probably the funniest part is mixing up the terminology and the athletes' names. But it's definitely, it definitely takes a talent to keep up with all the teams. But at this point, I have such an interest in it anyway
Yeah.
that it's just kind of natural to keep up with it. I'm a big Twitter person. I, follow
Myself included.
yeah. So I see all the any type of news that I need to know about each team and each sport. So, but it's also, you can't know everything,
Yeah.
so
Cool.
that's definitely a challenge, but it's a fun challenge.
So I guess stepping away from sports, what are some of the things you like to do to, it's always important to take a break. What are some things you like to do outside of sports reporting?
Um, watch sports. I have a very very good relationship with my 7 friends from college.
Great.
We live in all different places. A couple in Massachusetts, a couple on Long Island, in New
Mhm.
York, Jersey. So coming together with my friends from college is definitely one of the things I do when I am not working. And that those are the days I'll take off for. My friends are meeting in the city or something. So
Mhm.
I would say my friends are probably my biggest priority outside of work.
That's amazing. And I hope we can all do that sometime soon,
Yeah, me too.
obviously.
Miss them a lot.
Yeah. Quarantine is not really the best, but
Nope.
here we go. Um, what has been the best, or I guess like I had a question about, writing on deadline. How do you get good at it? How do you get good at it? How do you improve on it? How do you cause it's so, obviously time constrained and you
Mhm.
have to get like the most important information in I'm sure a small amount of time. How do you balance it all?
Practice, practice makes perfect.
Yep.
The more you do it, the more pressure you feel, the more exciting it is. I think you definitely start to learn on your feet, and you pick up different tips and tricks and ways of easily putting in the information that makes it easy for the editor to just kind of tighten it and post it, because that's all it's about is just getting it up online as soon as the game ends, because
Mhm.
that's when people start going and looking for it. And then after that, then you come back and then we can rearrange it however we want to and add all the quotes that we got from the locker
Once
room and
it's
stuff.
up.
Yeah, once it's up, you can
Okay.
still, at least for web, yeah, you can just update it, because that's the whole point of getting it in as soon as humanly possible, is so we could put it right up on the web.
Yeah.
But in technicality, if it was just for the paper, I would be able to wait until like 11:15 to send
Okay.
it in. But because we have web now, all that kind of stuff matters, getting it up first, and SEO, and all the way Google search engine works. So we try to do that, but definitely just practice, just doing it more than once, and doing it consistently.
Mhm.
You just learn how to roll with the punches and
Yeah.
learn how to figure it out, because you really don't have a choice but to figure it out.
Mhm. One question I always like to ask, I guess it's a bit more of a personal question, not really sports related. When I'm, doing a feature story, what's something you really like or admire about yourself?
Hmm, a good question. I would probably say people tend to be very like light around me. I tend to
Okay.
lighten the area, I guess, a little bit. I like to ask questions that make athletes laugh, and make them, not think about the fact that they're standing in the middle of 25 reporters right now, just like a small thing. I asked Pete Alonso, when Jeff McNeil was last named to the All-Star team, I asked him if it was their Step Brothers video that he made. Do you remember that they made like a mock Step Brothers video together?
I think I do
And
remember seeing
yeah,
that.
it was really big. And I said, "Do you think it was the video?" And he laughed. It was just such a small, just I remembered it. And
Yeah.
he cracked up. He was like, "Maybe." He was like, "I honestly think it might be." So I probably say that I like that I can do that sometimes. And I was in the locker room for maybe like 5 or 6 games, and I was able to, interject like that and just make
Yeah.
a little lighthearted joke. So I probably say that, I like making other people laugh. I like just being a lighter presence, because sometimes, doing the same thing over and over again, especially for the beat writers that I'm with all the time, beat writers are covering the same team day after day, day after day, day. I'm not.
Yeah.
I get to do different things every day, which is a blessing. So I think I like to come in and just be like a different presence, someone that they haven't seen, someone like a little refreshing, I guess. So I'd probably say that I get that impression from people when I'm around them sometimes at work. So
Does that give you a bit more of an advantage? Would you say that you're not, there all the time, that you are able to cover different events and then go back? It does change
Sometimes,
it up.
yes, sometimes I wouldn't necessarily call it I wouldn't necessarily call it an advantage, but
Mhm.
because honestly, you could ask any reporter,
Sure.
being around the team day after day and being able to be a familiar face like that, I've introduced myself to athletes that I've had to reintroduce myself to because I
Yeah.
only met them once. So, that for me is frustrating because I'm like, I introduced myself to you, like, but I know you don't remember me because why would
Right.
you? So I wouldn't call it an advantage because, I eventually would love to be a beat reporter or a beat
Right.
writer because I'm fascinated by that. And I kind of got a little taste of that at UMass.
Yeah.
I was able to develop really strong relationships and friendships with some of the players, and it definitely affects the reporting. It affects what
Right.
they're willing to say to you, and it affects everything. I think it just makes you such a better reporter when they know who they're talking to. But then you have
Right.
athletes they'll talk to a wall, like about themselves, like they will talk to anybody, and like those are obviously the most easy people to work with, but yeah.
Right. Right. How what does it say? I literally lost my question. I'm sorry.
Sorry. We were
I'm sorry
talking
for
about
confusing.
having an advantage.
Yeah. How or what would be like your biggest aspiration? What's your biggest goal? Because you said you wanted to be a full-time,
Yeah.
beat reporter.
Yeah.
Is that it?
That would probably that's like the next step that I would love to take. Either being a beat reporter. I would be a beat reporter for any team. I
Yeah.
really would, except for football. I wouldn't do football. Football is probably
Really?
like my least knowledgeable. Like
Mm,
I can write about it and like but I obviously I never played. I never really was around it
mm.
either. So I have a good knowledge of the Jets and Giants, but if I were to be a beat reporter, you need to have knowledge of the whole league.
Yeah.
So I probably would, and they know that. My editors know that football is my not my strong suit. So, but
Right.
I would do basketball. I would do hockey. I would do baseball. I really would do any other sport. I would love to be on a beat just to be able to experience getting to create those relationships and friendships and sources. You don't get sources unless you're there every day. It
Right.
just doesn't happen. So that's also what's kind of weird to navigate as a general assignment because like especially for the Islanders, because towards the end there I was kind of on the beat. I really covered every home game leading into the shutdown, and it's like strange when I see other reporters breaking news from sources and I'm like, why can't I do that? Why didn't I know that? Why didn't somebody tell me that? But it's
That's
like,
literally something I say to myself
yeah.
all the time.
Exactly. So that's kind of like a difficult thing to realize, but it's all, again, I've only been around a year. So it's like,
Yeah.
you can't really rush things like that. That kind of stuff comes with years and years of dedication. So,
Right.
but yeah, I would love to be a beat writer. And then I would also love to just focus on NHL. Like if I could pick my perfect job title, I guess it would just be like National Hockey League reporter
Right.
for the entire league. I would love that.
Right. Well, I hope you get to do that. I really appreciate your time with this. It means the absolute world to me,
Of
and I'm
course.
so looking forward to sharing this story.
Thank you so much.